Hello, it's me again. Welcome back to another video where I talk about my favorite books and try to convince you all to read them. So today I'm going to talk about some of my favorite books that remind me of the Studio Ghibli aesthetics by story-wise or plot-wise or even just atmosphere-wise. And I'm going to talk about some of my favorite books that I've read over the years that remind me and make me feel like that I'm inside a Ghibli movie. So Ghibli films, basically, to me, they mean that this flowery, natural aesthetics. I mean, a lot of the Ghibli movies that I'm sure if you're a Ghibli fan, you know that they mainly explore the themes of humanity with in connection to nature, in connection to their roots. And according to some of my favorite Ghibli films like Kiki's Delivery Service, House Moving Castle, Princess Mononoke, all of these films sort of makes me feel like I don't know, in my definition, it makes me feel like that I'm inside this flowery forest going on this adventure that is so cozy but so intense at the same time, which explores the themes of very sensitive themes of childhood, nostalgia, and at the same time, which makes me feel very safe and cozy and warm and happy. So, the books I'm going to talk about today are the books that make me feel those things, books that have more or less have these references of nature or this connection between humanity and nature first of all, and second of all, they deal with very sensitive themes like childhood, like memories and stuff like that. Basically, some books that just makes me feel safe and warm and happy and cozy and just have a special place in my heart. So without further ado, let's talk about the books. So the first book I want to talk about is a very recent read for me, and it's called The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. And this was one of my recent reads, and this book is just so wonderful and wholesome and beautiful. This book follows our main character who is a witch, but she has to keep her identity secret because in this world, which is sort of our world but with magic, have possessing magical powers is sort of a curse if witches are being hunted and stuff like that. So she has to keep her powers secret. Parallelly with this main character, there are these other main characters who live in this secret house in a very remote area, and there lives three witchy children who possess these magical powers, but since they are being hunted down and since they have to keep their identities a secret, they're sort of being nurtured and cherished in this sort of orphanage or sort of very small school. So our main character goes to this place, and basically she is given the responsibility to teach these young children the art of witchcraft, basically, or the art of magic. And things start to unravel from there, and it is a very cozy story. It almost feels like a children's fiction, but obviously has some very adult themes on it. It's one of the most adorable and wholesome books I've read in my entire life. It just gives you all these the relationships between the children, among the children, and the relationships between the children and the adults of this book, and the relationships between the adults are just so adorable. I can't find another word to describe this book apart from adorable and wholesome. The reason why it reminds me of Ghibli films is because it has a lot of nature imageries, a lot of magical nature imageries that just connects nature to human beings with these magical powers, magical entities, and it just feels so cozy and so wonderful. And it's just one of those books that will put a big smile in your face. And it has a very adorable subplot of romance, it has very adorable subplot of found family, and it's just altogether a very good time. So, yeah. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. So the next book I want to talk about is called Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and this is a book that is literally on the opposite side of spectrum than the first book I talked about. But this also makes me feel very Ghibli-esque. If you are a Shakespeare nerd or if you're a literature nerd, you obviously know that Shakespeare's one and only son, Hamnet, died in the bubonic plague in England in the 1600s or 1500s. And so basically we follow these family, not Shakespeare. This book is not told from Shakespeare's point of view. That is a huge reminder. This is told from the point of view of the family of Shakespeare, his daughters, his wife, his mother, and it's just specifically the female characters, the female point of views of Shakespeare's family. And it's just a really beautiful book. It's heartbreaking, it's so emotional. It deals with the themes of, obviously, there are a lot of trigger warnings in this book because there's literally child death at the beginning of the book. It's not a spoiler, it's just the story of Hamnet. But it's an a heart wrenching, devastating book, which also makes you feel like that you can't get enough. The reason why it reminds me of Ghibli films is because there are scenes in this book that just feels so serene and very eerie and atmospheric. Also, there are a lot of nature references, as you can imagine, on this book as well. And it's just all in all a very beautiful, a very atmospheric read, which I feel like sort of sums up the Ghibli feeling. The next book I want to talk about is called The Lonely Castle in the Mirror. This is a Japanese literary fiction that was translated into English, and I also read this book pretty recently. And oh my god, this book is just the literal depiction, the literal book representation of like the whole concept of Ghibli movies. So basically, this book follows our very young protagonist who has been sort of expelled from school, or she just has stopped going to school altogether, and she never tells her parents or anyone else the reason why she stopped going to school. And she very much leads this very sad and gloomy and very lonely life. She doesn't talk to anybody, she doesn't go outside her house, and it's pretty obvious to her parents and all the other adults that she's going into this slow but very serious depression. So one day, this mirror in her room starts shining, and when she touches the mirror, she finds herself being able to move through the mirror. And as you can guess from the title, that there's a castle on the other side of the mirror. So this girl meets a lot of other children and a few magical entities on the other side of the mirror, and the story sort of gets from there as an adventural quest. But when I first read the book, on the almost like the first 60%, 70% of the book, I was so sure this is going to be a four-star read. I mean, of course, the atmosphere was there. The I was sort of getting what the writer was trying to make me feel and everything, but I didn't like totally fell in love with it. I enjoyed the book a lot. I enjoyed the reading experience a lot. It was very slow, which I think was intentional. If you read the book, you'll know why. But at the end of the book, it was just, I just finished the book and I just put it down and I was like, what did I just, what just happened? And it was just so incredibly moving, so emotional. I never expected the ending. It was just, for being in a children's book, it's so, so, so devastating. And it just explores everything that Ghibli basically explores. It explores childhood, it explores childhood trauma, it explores the psychology of children, it explores found family, friendships, and all these amazing things, but also some very sensitive themes and topics in the context of a very atmospheric and a very magical scenario. And it's just one of the best books I read in 2023, and I so fell in love with it, and I just want everybody to read it. And if you love any movie by Ghibli, anything, this is going to be your favorite read of the year. The next book I want to talk about is called The Inheritance of Orquidia Divina, and this book is one that I read a long time ago, but it just stuck with me for so long. And I think if you're a fan of the Ghibli films or the Ghibli aesthetics, you are going to fall in love with it. So this book follows our main protagonist who receives a letter from her grandmother that her grandmother is dying and she wants her granddaughter to come back home and collect her inheritance. So the granddaughter goes back to this very remote area where her grandmother lives, and she soon finds that she's not the only family member who got the letter. The whole family got the letter, the whole extended family got the letter. And when they reach there, they see that something very weird is happening, something very mystical and magical and very bizarre is happening. And yeah, I think that's all you need to know about the book before you read it. I read the book without knowing anything about it. I just knew it was magical realism. I just knew it had like a family inheritance trope. But this book surprised me in the best possible way. This book is so magical, so mystical, and it's filled with lush and beautiful and just so atmospheric nature imageries. There are flowers everywhere, there are roots going so deep in the fields, and just everything is just so beautiful. And the magic in this book, it's a magical realism book, and the magic in this book is very closely linked with nature. Also, the family dynamic of this book is so wholesome, so close to my heart. I read this book on a very bad time in my life, and it just gives me the sense of comfort and hope that Ghibli films give me. It's also on the lighter side of the atmospheric, unlike the last one, Lonely Castle in the Mirror, but it's just really beautiful and really heartwarming. And again, if you want a good time with some very intense family dynamics, but some very wholesome family dynamics as well, this is the book to check out, The Inheritance of Orquidia Divina. So the fifth and last book I want to talk about is another lighter read that will give you the cozy and wonderful and beautiful Ghibli vibes. It's called Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. So yes, I know it's a pretty popular book, and I know that fairy is not for everybody. It's not for me either. I've never read one fairy book in my life, believe it or not. But this one was so freaking cute. So the second book comes out sometime later this month, and I can't wait for this. It was so amazing, so mesmerizing. So the book follows our main character Emily Wilde, as you can guess from the title. So Emily Wilde is a researcher on the matters of fairies. So the fairies are basically sort of magical creatures who live in these woods in like very remote areas of the world. And so Emily Wilde, she is a professor at a university who teaches or researches about these fairy folk that she calls. And for her research, she goes to this very remote, very cold and very atmospheric village, like at the almost at the ends of the world, continue her research on these fairy folks. So basically, we follow Emily in her quest to find more about this very mysterious, very dangerous, but also sometimes friendly creatures. And we follow Emily on her adventure to befriend the villagers or even being settled in the village. And it also has a very adorable romance in it. It just, if you love House Moving Castle, you're going to love the love interest of this character. I can assure you that. Keep it in mind that the love interest or the romance subplot is very subtle. There's almost like very little romance subplot, which I kind of like. I mean, I'm someone who enjoys a good romance, but still, the romance was kind of felt like it was the perfect amount. It wasn't too much or too little. Another aspect of this book that reminds me so much of Ghibli films is the nature aspects of this book. It's so beautiful, so atmospheric. There's literally some scenes when Emily accidentally sort of goes into the fairy realm of the world, and it's just so beautifully written, so much atmosphere, so much descriptive imageries of nature, and it's just wonderful. And again, if you love House Moving Castle, like all in all, this is one of your favorite books of all time. This is going to be. Also, if you love some academic setting or like someone who is a very academical nerd, that I am, and I really enjoy reading a character like Emily Wilde because she's like that. She always has her nose stuck in a book. She's always like putting her research and putting her work before everything else. Emily was basically a very lovable character for me, but it's also true that she's a little hard to root for. But when you start rooting for her, you'll definitely fall in love with her and all the other characters of this book. So yeah, if you want a book with house moving castle vibes and just in general Ghibli references of nature and wholesomeness and coziness, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Alright, so that was the 5 books that I wanted to talk about that gives me the Ghibli feeling, and I hope you'll check them out and let me know how they make you feel as a Ghibli lover, or even if you're someone who's just getting into Ghibli. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys with another video soon. Bye.